We're live. Hello, everybody.
Yay.
What did I do?
You're still here.
Black. Okay, my screen went black.
No. Okay. Well, everyone in the comments, tell us if you can see us. I like to establish that we're heard, we're seen, we're here. Everything's good. Okay. I had us playing in another window, so now I get to hear myself giggling through my own headphones. That's great. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm unprepared, as always. I finished this last night.
At least your thoughts are fresh.
Right? I usually like to finish the book club pick, and then I spend like the whole next day watching other people's reviews for the book, because I like to get a better understanding of like what other people thought and if my feelings are on par. I've done none of that. I know nothing. I've seen zero discourse about this book. I haven't checked out like what the author has to say. I haven't seen if there's an edit. I know nothing. So we're just gonna dive into this together. Hello, everybody. I'm Kayla. Welcome to the Literally Dead Book Club. In the month of February, we read When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole, and we're going to talk about it for the next half hour. I have some wonderful guests here, Chanelle and Zoe. So if you guys want to introduce yourselves, tell me, I haven't done this in a while. This is the first live show of the book club for 2021. What do I want to know? I want to know like what to expect from your channel. Your links are down below so people can click on you and find you if they haven't already. So like, what can we expect from your channel, and tell us a couple of your favorite thrillers.
I will go first. Hi everyone, I'm Chanelle and my channel is Chanelle Time. And on my channel, you can honestly expect so much, but also the unexpected. So there's all kinds of things. But with reading, I mostly read romance and thrillers. I do read YA contemporaries a lot as well. But if you're like a fantasy person,
Sometimes.
We're on the struggle bus right now with that. So, but I also do a lot of videos on movies and TV shows as well. So if you love that kind of stuff, you can find all of that on my channel. And my favorite thrillers, I would definitely say like Behind Her Eyes. That was so good. What else? Gone Girl. Hate everyone in that book, but it was so good. And then maybe also Pretty Girls. Karen Slaughter, that book, those would be like my top three. And I don't know what else we're supposed to say. I think that was it.
You're good.
Hi, I'm Zoe from the channel Zoe's All Booked. You can expect nothing from my channel right now because I'm on an unplanned hiatus. It's fine. I'm actually planning on starting to film again next week. So I read romance and fantasy. So if you like fantasy, and Chanelle doesn't cover that for you, come see me. If we're being totally honest, other than this book, the last thriller that I read was a long time ago. And I think it was The Last Time I Lied by Riley, what's the name?
Sager.
That's the one. Yep. We're so smart on this end of things. And I like that one a lot. But I am actually planning on the first things that I do when I break my like book buying ban officially is I'm reading booktubers' favorite thrillers type blog. And I'm stealing reps from both of you for obvious reasons.
Wow.
I might do a vlog for each booktuber, or I might do one where it's like this book was recommended by multiple booktubers. So, and I will see if I can trust you, both of you.
I'm like, that hope's going well for me.
I don't know.
That's really exciting. Oh my god, I'm excited about that. Okay, sweet. Okay. Oh, have you guys read Alyssa Cole before? Like her romance?
I haven't read anything. This is like my first book by Alyssa Cole.
Yeah, me too.
She's one of my favorite authors. And she's actually a bean as well. But her Reluctant Royal series is 10 out of 10. It's fantastic. It's perfection. And I highly recommend it. Very different vibes from this book, naturally.
Right.
Right. You would hope romance doesn't have the same vibe as this, but I really, really like her other stuff.
Mhm.
Okay. I want to see in the comments. I always like to get an idea of who's here, who's read the book, and who's here like just to hang out. So give me, what do I want? I want a blue heart if you read it. I want a yellow heart if you haven't. I want to keep it like spoiler free for a little bit for those of you who maybe like need convincing to read this book, and then you're gonna hop out of here before we get into spoilers. So I'm gonna have Chanelle kind of just like pitch the book, tell us like the Cliff's notes, and to also remind people, because I see a lot of people haven't read this for a couple months, just like what happened in here. Holy shit, that's a lot of blue hearts. Oh my god, I'm so excited. Okay.
Okay, so When No One Is Watching is basically a psychological thriller / suspense where we follow our main character, Sydney, who lives in Brooklyn. And the entire book is basically about gentrification. So there are a lot of condos being built in Brooklyn. There are a lot of people who have been living in the neighborhoods for a really long time who are now suspiciously disappearing. And a bunch of white people are showing up. And things are changing in the area. And we basically are following Sydney along with her, I almost said roommate, no, her neighbor. We're following Sydney along with one of her neighbors, Theo, and the two of them are basically going through the history of Brooklyn, of racism, of gentrification. And that's the entire story, like in its bare bones form. That's what we're doing. We're following them. We're trying to figure out what's going on, where are these people going, where are these people moving in, things like that. Hope that was a good summary. I'm like, oh, it's been a while. I read this like the beginning of February. So
That was great. I always love getting someone to like pitch the book at the beginning because for some reason it always does something for me. I'm like, that book sounds so good.
Yeah.
oh
You
my
just
god,
read
somebody commented and they were roommates.
Not a roommate.
No.
One bed. One bed.
I also checked out the audiobook for some portions of it, and I agree. If you need convincing to check out this book, I would absolutely recommend it on audio.
Oh, I haven't listened to the audiobook because I have the arc of it. I read it last September, and I forgot that like the book is actually out because I'm smart. And I forgot that the audiobook is a thing. But if it's the same narrator as her Reluctant Royal series, then it would be very excellent. I don't know if it is though.
It's got it's always nice when it's like a dual perspective book and you actually get multiple narrators. So it was really nice.
There is. Oh, I like it.
Hell yeah, it's so good. I would listen to it again. No spoilers yet of my thoughts. So first I want, because I love going into these lives and not knowing what anybody thought of the book. Obviously I know Zoe enjoyed it because she's the one who really, her and Fadwa convinced me to read it in the first place.
We harassed her on Twitter, let's be honest.
But then I saw Chanelle reading it. I think it was like on Instagram I saw it pop up and I was like, Chanelle, you need to join us on this discussion. But I have no idea what you thought. So if everyone in the comments wants to pop up their rating now, I would love to know that. I'm really happy with all these blue hearts. I'm so glad so many of you have read it. I think this was actually, I want to say, besides maybe the guest list, and I think like the very first month I did the book club, this was the highest participation I've ever seen in the book club. The Goodreads was popping off. Instagram, so many tags, like it was nuts. And I see that not everybody completely loved it, but there's a lot of 5 stars in here that I'm happy about. Because guess what? I gave it 5 stars. I loved this book so much, and I'm so happy that I did. I feel like a lot of times this book club has had its ups and downs. I've only given out one other 5-star in my own damn book club, and it's Catherine's House, which everyone else hated.
That was so good. Loved it.
No. And so I feel like sometimes in these lives, like I have to really structure it out. I have to really think about how I'm going to speak about things, because if I hate my own book club book, I still have to find a way to discuss it in a good way that's like recognizing that you all loved it, or recognizing the things that it said that were important. But like this one, I loved it. It was great. I'm so happy about it. And now, Chanelle, I feel like I'm hyping it up a lot. Chanelle, did you feel the same, or are you like?
So, while reading it, so I gave it like when I initially read it, it was like a 3-star for me. But then when I went back and like read the parts again, it was like a 4-star. So I'm gonna sit at a 4. And like I said, this is like my first Alyssa Cole book. I felt like this book was very terrifying. And so I couldn't, like, I don't know if you've ever had that feeling where you're reading something and you're so scared that it's hard for you to even enjoy it. And then every time that Theo would pop up, I was like, please, can he just, please? Like, so his character was just, I'm not I'm not gonna say any spoilers, but I just have to say his character and the way his character interacted with Sydney, I could not stand. Like, I was like, he just reminded me of so many guys from high school and college that I felt so sick. I was like, no. But if I was rating it based on everything else that didn't involve Theo, it would have been 5 stars. I just couldn't stand him.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's yep. He reminded me of good old St. Anne High School.
Yeah.
Entirely. And it's
and the pacing also was one of the reasons why I was like, this can't be a 5-star for me, because the pacing was just really, really odd. And I don't know what other people really think about it either, because I also tend to not look up anything immediately after. Like, I take a while, so I still didn't, because I was like, I'm just reading this for fun, doesn't matter. And then now I'm like, wait, what did other people think?
I'm seeing a lot of 3 stars, which I get. I get that it's not for everybody. I don't know. I have some feelings about the way I've seen this book discussed, but I respect the ratings.
Yep.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing, because, for example, like when I was like, okay, I hate Theo, can't stand him. And also the biggest issue for me was the pacing. That was the biggest thing. And I have to be like fully involved in the story to give it a 5-star read. But I have noticed when people talk about this, like people were like, oh, it's a 2-star, it's a 1-star. Because right before this, I decided to maybe check on Goodreads. So I went on and looked at a lot of the ratings. And I saw some very similar themes in the 1 and 2 stars that I was like, okay. Yeah. That's your decision, but okay.
So, what did you rate it? I don't actually know your rating. I just know you liked it enough to read it twice.
I gave it a 5-star both times. Actually, I say both times, but technically I still have 20 pages left in my reread, because everybody needed Mama at the same time today.
Oh,
I couldn't finish the book, but I've already read it, so it's fine. I gave it 5 stars, mostly because I love Alyssa Cole a lot. But the pacing was weird. And I'm thinking a lot of that might just be because it's her first thriller and she writes romance. So it's a very different genre. So I'm curious, like, if she writes another one, if the pacing is going to be better than this one, because it was a little weird. Theo, I agree. Just, I have thoughts about Theo. I live in a predominantly white area, and he reminds me of a lot of the people that I went to high school with. And that was, and also just as a Greek, Theo means uncle. So every time I saw his damn name, I'm like, whose uncle is this man? Okay. Like,
no.
I get so annoyed when I see that name, but that is a very like me issue. I think the reason that I gave it 5 stars, despite like the issues that I had with it, was the vibes were immaculate. They were, when I see people say this wasn't scary or creepy, I'm like, what wrong under? Okay.
And even when people say like it wasn't scary until like the last third, I'm like, no.
It was scary from the page.
Did you not read the scene at the corner store 40 pages in? How did that not give you such anxiety?
The Uber. For anybody, especially anybody who is like female presenting at the very least, the Uber scene, I almost threw up the first time I read it because I read it at 3 a.m. and I was terrified. And I was like, I am never getting into a car with a strange man ever again. But like the vibes and the way it was pitched as like Get Out meets Rear Window was, I think, the perfect comp titles for this book. Because reading this felt exactly like watching Get Out. And like, I don't like being scared at all because I'm a little bitch. And like I said, I read this at 3 a.m. the first time. So like just all of the creepy, like it's not outright scary, like jump scares or just like gore outright, but it's just the little terrifying things that some people don't think about because they've never lived an experience like that. But the way that she wrote this, you can tell that she knows what it's like to feel like Sydney does in these moments, that it's like the hair on the back of your neck is just, it's prickling, it's raised, there's something wrong, but just the vibes were so beautiful. I'm so hormonal. Okay,
I like
the vibes were good.
The Uber scene, honestly, after I read that, I honestly could not sleep because as somebody who has lived in the Bay Area, where like I had to take Ubers and live like everywhere, especially at night, I was so scared reading that because I was like, there's nothing more terrifying than that situation. And then like thinking, oh my gosh, because if you really think about it, Uber drivers have your address. Like they can very easily know your whereabouts and you would never even know, because who really pays attention to exactly, like every time I get in an Uber, I literally look at that license plate and I'm like, does it match? Does the person in there match the photo on my phone every single time? So when I saw that, I was like,
the fact that she asked his name first instead of saying, who are you picking up? Like, girl, you should know better.
You never should. Whenever you get an Uber, anybody who's watching this, if you're, well, I mean, we should all be at home right now, but if you are ever getting in an Uber or a Lyft, do not ask them, like, you need to be like, hey, what is your name? Like, there's a specific way you need to ask them things because you could get snatched before you even know it.
The number one thing, you don't just go in, are you picking so-and-so up? Because anybody could say yes.
Like, don't be like, hi, I'm Ashley, you're my Uber driver, right? No. Be like, hey, what's your name?
Who are you picking up? What's your license plate? What's your date of birth? What's your social insurance number?
That's like, when I saw people, initially when this first came out, before I had even read it, I saw so many people. I don't know if we can get into spoilers, so I'm not going to say any spoiler.
No, let's. We're halfway. Oh my god, we're already past halfway through this live. Get into it.
Okay, cool. I mean,
if you haven't read the book, get out of here, guys.
Like when I saw people initially when this book first came out being like, oh, this isn't scary at all. Like, it's just boring. It's just like about this, you know, Brooklyn. Like, we already have a book about New York and Kate Jameson. First of all, those are not the same genre at all. Like, I saw somebody's Goodreads talk about that. And I was like, first of all, these are not the same genre. That's like comparing every single book written in California and being like, I think we have enough. So, no. But when I saw people talking about how it wasn't scary, I was like, first of all, have you ever watched House Hunters? Do you see the families? No, that's honestly, when I was reading this, I thought it because I have watched House Hunters literally from the moment it was a thing. So, and then I was like, oh, we want a house. And I was like, why do they keep saying house? And I realized it was Canadian. I was like, oh my God. But like when you, even if you think about real life situations like House Hunters or like the people who have those like renovating TV shows, focus on what neighborhoods they're moving into, focus on how they're renovating those places, focus on the people who are like, oh yeah, I have $1 million and I want to buy a house in this town in Brooklyn, and also hopefully in the next 5 years there'll be some Starbucks. Things like that happen in real life all the time. So it's terrifying. Like, even thinking about when I read Michelle Obama's like memoir, there were discussions like that happening, you know? So it's like, it's terrifying.
Like, what really stood out to me was that like the actual research and like the history involved, like it's not like this is all being pulled out of thin air. Like this happens regularly. It's been happening regularly for centuries. And it's like, this isn't just a made up scenario. It's so scary because it is genuinely currently happening. And yes, some people are like, you know what? I don't find it scary because it doesn't happen to me. Well, I have thoughts about that. Just not good thoughts. I don't have.
I think it's interesting. No, Zora, that's a good point you bring up, because I'll just say this because I know you might have more to say, but I think that's a really interesting point to bring up, because people can read things like Pretty Girls and can read like Riley Sager books and can read like Stephen King books and be absolutely terrified, and they've not possibly gone through those things. You know what I mean?
Like, how many people met a murdering clown?
Exactly. Like, how many people have been through the situations that happened in it? And people were like, I'm so scared. So why is it that with authors like that and with stories like that, you can be fully terrified, never having experienced it? But when it's a book, like when no one is watching, the immediate thing is, oh, this isn't scary, therefore it's not a thriller because I haven't experienced it. I just think it's interesting.
Why can we relate more to vampires and fairies than actual real life Black people?
I think it's about like the language you use as well, because like it's one thing to say, I don't prefer thrillers that do this. You know, maybe you prefer thrillers that do have jump scares. Maybe you prefer thrillers that are high action and are gimmicky and are like over the top the entire time. You can have that preference, but you can't look at this book and say it's not a thriller because it doesn't do those things.
You know,
I think I haven't watched this video, but Jessie from Bow Ties and Books, I know, did a video really heavily referencing this.
Yeah, I heard about that.
I'll put it in the description. I didn't watch it because I was worried it would spoil the book.
It doesn't, no.
Oh, okay.
It's about how white people don't define what's scary.
Right.
And that video did come out around this book when it was first published. And it's like, just because it's not what you find scary doesn't mean that it's not part of this genre. And it went into thriller and horror as well. And Jessie referenced a lot of different books and made a lot of good points. Right? Like, I highly recommend that people read that or watch that.
I just realized somebody just made a comment about this. The buying food, was it the buying food scene? Or it reminded me of the scene where Sydney and Theo go to the store, the corner store, and Sydney's trying to buy something, and then the guy gives her the wrong change. And then he's immediately like trying to make her think that she's not, like, she didn't give him the money she gave him. And then it only takes Theo stepping in and being like, that's not what happened. And then being like, this is not the situation, blah, 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 for that man to be like, okay, whatever, like, here. You know what I mean? And that is so scary because that does happen. It does happen in real life. And when you're alone, there's nothing you can do except just walk away with whatever they give you.
Like, I love that she actually called him out after that too. And she's like, I did the mental math on how much energy this would take for me to fight it or just walk away. I don't need you and your white saviorness to come in and fight this for me because you're making it worse. And it's like, a lot of people don't realize that, like, most people do that kind of mental math every time there's a confrontation, no matter what it is, but especially in a setting like this where you know exactly why it's happening, but they don't want to say it. And just, it's like, I'm so happy that the line was in there calling him out and not just saying, thank you for taking care of me. Like,
yeah, no, I agree with that too. And I think something that is really important for especially non-Black allies, most especially white allies, is to, like, it's great that you want to help when there's situations going on. Like, for example, in that corner store scene, or another scene, maybe like, because I've had a situation where one of my bosses said something extremely racist. And I was like, okay, if I say something back, it's going to end up in me getting less hours, which is going to end up in me doing this, which is going to end up in me not having a job, which is going to end up in me applying to another job where I'm probably going to have another white boss that's going to put me through the same situation. And then, so in situations like that, okay, let's say you have like a friend who's white and standing up for you, and they say something. Your friend is there for that moment, but now they said something, and now your boss knows that you feel some type of way about it. And the next time that happens and your friend isn't there, it's going to be worse. So it's like, that's what Sydney was trying to illustrate to Theo, because the next time, what if she needs to buy some groceries at like 3 a.m. and it's only her and that person, it's not going to be the same situation where that person's going to be like, oh yeah, I remember when that one guy you were with. No, he's going to be even more upset, which is going to be an even like, now he might accuse her of stealing when she did it.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So it's like, I think that's something that a lot of allies don't think about, because while you're there to help for 2 seconds, the mental math that a person of color does, especially a Black person, especially a Black female presenting person in situations like that, it's for a reason. Because we know
Mm-hmm.
that you're not going to always be next to us.
And like you patting yourself on the back for 5 seconds is not worth it, because it makes it worse every other time.
Exactly.
And like the fact that that line calling him out was there was so important, because people generally don't say anything, because it's just going to make it even like a worse situation with the friend or the coworker or something. Because then they're like, well, why aren't you grateful for me helping you? And then it's a whole different issue. And it's like, you know what? I'm just going to go back. I don't have the energy.
This is another thing too. I know, Lala, you haven't said anything yet, so I'm gonna say this real quick.
No, go.
I hate speaking over people.
No,
So
I feel extremely just lucky to have you two sharing your opinions on everything. Please continue.
I just like one thing. So I don't know if anyone else in the audience or here has also read Such a Fun Age, but this is another thing too that I saw with this, without spoilers. This is another thing that I saw, even on TikTok, people were discussing this. They were like, if you're experiencing so and so and so, why don't you just speak up? Why don't you just say something? Why are you just quiet? And it's like, one, it's way easier to stand up for other people than it is to stand up for yourself, especially when it comes to racial discrimination. It is so much easier to be there for others because there's a lot you have to unpack yourself. And this is a common criticism that I see with Black female characters in stories, is that people are either like, well, she was too aggressive and too angry about it, or they're like, well, she was just like a doormat and let everybody talk to her. And it's like, you can't win either way, because what is seeming like this person is a doormat is somebody doing that mental math.
Someone who's experienced it multiple times and knows exactly how it'll play out.
Exactly.
It's not new.
Exactly. It's like, you've been through this a million times. Like, this one time is not, it's like, unfortunately not going to change anything. So it's like, what do I do in this situation? It's kind of like, what are the pros and cons? And is it worth it to say something, or should I just like quickly buy this and then like run away real quick and never come to the store again? Because
there's some people you can say something and it will actively change their mind and help them work towards not doing the stupid shit. But there's a lot of people where you just say it's not worth it. And it's in multiple situations. And it's like what you were saying though about the angry Black woman, especially. I was seeing a lot of things saying that the end of this book didn't fit in with the earlier stuff because she just goes and starts shooting people. Well, what did you
think was going to happen?
You see these precious old people that have taken care of you your entire life being drugged and experimented on. And you see all of these people saying, you know what, worth it. They're not actually people. We don't really see them as people. I personally would start shooting. And that's as a Canadian. Okay? Like,
that's as a Canadian. Time to mute myself and disappear.
Like, what are you expecting? She's going to sit down and have a chat with them and say, please don't experiment on my people. Please stop drugging us and trying to push us out of our homes. Please, I'll call the police. Like, no. What else was she going to do? There was no. And it's like, especially saying she was angry. Wouldn't you be angry? Like, what other emotion are you going to have?
The thing that confuses me the most is whenever people say, like, why are you angry? It's like, would you, even if you were not Black, even if you were not a person of color, would you not be angry if your home was being taken from you, your people were being taken, killed, like, and you had no voice to use and you could not say? Wouldn't you at some point crack and just literally be like, everybody got to suffer.
And especially finding out that like the lawyer involved with like scamming the mom too. And it's like, it's not just your neighbors, it's your mother who is now dead. And because of you, like your direct actions, you think like somebody even tries to hurt my mother? I'm sorry. That's like what other emotion are you supposed to be feeling? Anger, sadness, grief. What are you going to say? Thank you for doing this? No. It doesn't make sense that people are so hung up on the fact that she's angry and started shooting people. Like,
I love that's where the book went.
Say again?
I just love that's where the book went.
Yeah.
I feel like it could have gone in a lot of different directions. And from what I see from reviewers is they expected it to go a lot of different directions. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, I love the ending of the book. I love how things happened.
Like, how else are you supposed to get justice in a world that does not give Black people justice ever?
Yeah, it's funny just because one thing that I really thought about recently, especially before this live show, was this TikTok that I saw that talked about how, why does it seem like so many people, like so many Black people are either like moderately discussing things or like outside of, people who are like influencers and things like that. Why does it feel like people are just moderately discussing things? And it's because I feel like of that mental math. Like I just can't stop getting back to that because that was honestly one of the most important parts of this entire book. And I feel like everybody who read this book and is not Black and is not especially a person of color needs to look at that scene. Like if that's your only takeaway from this whole book, it needs to be that scene. Like when you're being an ally to people of color, when you're being an ally to Black people, to Black women, to Black, like any people, like just anyone who is marginalized, like you have to think about, what does this person want? It's not what do I want? What am I doing as an ally? What do I think this person needs? It's what does this person need? This person who is my friend, my partner, my whatever, like what do they need? And I don't know about other people, but I do not mind being asked. Because I don't want to get into a situation and then you're making me look like a clown because you didn't ask. Because it wasn't in the sample. You know what I mean?
I agree. And also, like, the people who were saying, like, she was just angry and whatever, and it's like, I really want them to go back and really look at if they ever identified with any of the white people coming into this neighborhood. And if they ever thought, yeah, that makes sense. Anything that they were saying. Because if there's even one instance where you're like, yeah, that's how I would react. You really, really, really need to re-examine yourself because there is not one single thing. Like even Theo, he had points where he literally said, I didn't see them as people. He said it he thought it was for a different reason just because of the way he was growing, like the way he was raised and everything. But he literally said, I don't see them as people, or I didn't. And now I want to. So it's like,
and then he wore that Black Lives Matter.
Oh my god! Oh my god! He got mad when she said
that. He was like, "What do you mean?" It's like the people who put BLM in their bio when they have like a Black partner, and then the moment they break up, it's gone. I'm like, okay.
He would have posted a black square. He would have posted a black square. Okay, that's it. That's it. That's the one. But like,
Lala's like standing up. She's like, I gotta go.
I think that's why, like, No, sorry, you go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, this book just to me felt like more than a thriller. It felt like a thriller and more,
which is so great, right? Like, I think I talked about in my I read all these horror books for the month of like November or whatever, and I spoke about the fact that like I now, if a thriller or horror book doesn't have some sort of social commentary, I don't want it anymore. Like it needs to be saying something. I need, like, it's not like I'm trying to like learn something, but I need it to have some depth to it. I was going to recommend like some of these books in tandem because I wanted to know any other books you'd recommend. I think Lakewood by Megan Giddings would be a really good kind of companion. Honestly, I thought of horror books when I was thinking about comparable titles to this, like Only Good Indians and Mexican Gothic, kind of gave me personally similar like atmosphere. But like in thinking about books that I would recommend, I don't know how to say it, but I just feel like a lot of the white people in the Goodreads in their reviews who are not like recognizing the themes, I would actually far more recommend like go and read Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall, go read Whites by Otaya Uegba, go read Biased by Jennifer Eberhardt, so you can have a little more of an understanding if you just are not recognizing white privilege at this point in your life, if you just don't see it, or if you connect with the white characters in this book and you think any of them are justified in what they're saying or what they're doing, then I would recommend you go into some nonfiction before you attempt a book like this again.
Yeah.
Especially if that whole bit about how, she's not, they don't want to say the word race.
My God.
But she has a picture of Michelle Obama.
I died.
In the living room. Like, it honestly, it reminded me of, I saw an interview about Get Out, the movie. And what's his face that played the dad, I think, I don't know. But there was a whole thing where it's like, they talked about how people think that they are woke and they're not racist because they would go up to a black person and say, if I could have voted Obama in for a third term, I would. And the guy who played the dad, I think it was in that movie, actually said to Jordan Peele, if I could have voted Obama in for a third term, I would, thinking that you're doing something. And it's like, that's that attitude. That's not it. That's really not it. Having a picture of Michelle Obama does not mean that you are not a racist person. Like, that's not the cutoff. You love the Obamas, you're good. Like,
yeah.
I would recommend her other Alyssa Cole's like Reluctant Royal series though, because there is social commentary in those as well. Obviously, it's romance; it's a different genre, but especially A Princess in Theory, the protagonist is a black woman in STEM, and the microaggressions that she experiences right in like the first few chapters are so similar to some of the ones, like the same vibe as the ones in this, especially with just the way that you're treated anywhere, like just regular situations. It doesn't need to be over the top. It doesn't need to be like something that people would stop and be like, we should call the police. It's little things. Like, there's so many little things in this book that people don't realize are microaggressions, but they really are. And it's like the little things chip away at you almost more than just the big things. Like dealing with overt racism, it's not like you get used to it, but you get more used to it than just the little things that people do every day. And you're like, I don't understand why you're not realizing, like, everything that Kim does is just calculated. But at the same time, there are so many things that it's like you see it every single day, people saying these exact same things, and they don't realize that it's wrong, or that they're saying something that's actually really racist. And they're just, especially when people have the us versus them mentality. Like that scene in the bodega right at the beginning where Kim is like, she's attacking me, I'm going to call the police.
Yeah.
With a grin on her face.
And she knew exactly what she was doing. And it's like, a lot of the times people don't even realize what they're doing, which makes it worse because it's so ingrained that people don't think about it, that they don't think about what they're saying and how it affects people and how it's just really, really disgusting, I think is the word I'm looking for.
I think like my closing or like my last comment that I would like to really say to everybody, especially if you're not Black, And this is something that, or especially if you're not Black or a person of color, this is something that Farida, the author of Ace of Spades, said that I think is really important to remember is that if you are reading books by authors of color, like Black, Indigenous, POC authors, and your main goal is to be educated, even if that book is going to educate you, don't forget that those authors are unpacking a lot of trauma and a lot of real fear that they're going through in real life. So while for you it might be like, oh, this is a 2-star read because it wasn't scary. That author, like obviously it's a book, whatever, like you're reading a book, it's fiction, anything, but also realize, especially that's why I said if you're going into something wanting to be educated, like remember the people are unpacking their trauma, their real life fear for your entertainment. So that's just something to think about. So you can read what you want, you can think about it the way you want to, but just realize that they're not just sitting down and being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like NaNoWriMo, time to write. Like there's a lot of things going on that they are bringing onto these pages. So
Especially
that's just like the takeaway.
There's that one scene that really, really resonated with me. And like just the fact that there was a character casually getting her hair braided in a thriller. I don't think I've ever seen that. And it's like, it's not something that I don't think a lot of people would pick up on, but it's like, oh, that's cool. Like just the braiding process and going to the beauty supply store and then going to get your hair braided. But the way when Sydney was outside of that store and the white couple walked by and they said, oh, guess we're never allowed in there. And it's like, you are coming into a space where you are forcing yourself in. And you sit like, you make non-white people feel unwelcome in your spaces and like the general spaces. And then when non-white people, especially Black people, create their own spaces, you get upset and you want in. And it's like, I would just love to see the white woman in that relationship go in there and try and get her hair braided. I would just love to see the consequences of that. Like in the sense that, you know, her hair's falling out after because there's just a lot going on with that. But like just that whole mentality, like we're not allowed in there like that. That was so annoying, that scene. And it's just, it was like one sentence and I wanted to jump through the pages and choke the person. I wanted to choke the dude who said that because it's like, honestly, you don't need to be in every space. You don't need to be in a space for Black women to go and get their hair done. Like that's why do you need to be in there? It's just like, and that attitude we see so much. I agree with that comment, Emma. That's
this comment section is just great. I think it is really important. I know like so many people want to say something like, well, I don't care about the author that I'm reading from. I don't care about their background. I don't think about their skin color and all that stuff. But that's not the flex that you think it is. You're not saying what you think you're saying. So when Chanelle's talking about like respecting the author, putting their trauma on the page, like I do think that is something so important to recognize. I feel like you could talk about this book and say that it's like, it's a little predictable. Like you see where it's going. There's not like the biggest twists and turns. But I actually think that that's such a strong writing choice from Alyssa Cole to watch us, like to allow us to watch Sydney process her trauma throughout the book. So like her mom is dead the entire time. And like that's a reveal, but it's not, because throughout the book you get the hints that that's a thing, and you see Sydney calling her voicemail and wanting to listen to her mother's voice, and you see her going through this, even though like the reveal hasn't happened. So like it is predictable in a way that you can see where it's going. But I think that's such a smart decision from her that she doesn't just like drop these twists on you from nowhere. It's like you get what's going on the entire time. And that's what makes it even more powerful, in my opinion.
I agree. like I clocked that her mom was dead within the first mention of her, because I'm like, that nobody talks about their living mother that way.
Yeah.
But like, what I really, really enjoyed was the fact that the whole twist of this wasn't mental illness, because that happens so often. And like, she thinks she's crazy because her ex-husband told her, and just the way he treated her and abused her made her think that she was crazy. And it would have been so easy for Alyssa Cole to just do that, like it was some sort of mental illness, and you know, it just, nothing was actually going on, it was just all in her head. But the fact that it wasn't, and she was justified in thinking everything that she was thinking, that really drove home too, like everything else that was going on in the book. Because that could have been such an easy cop out, like such an easy cop out.
I saw that quite a bit in the Goodreads. If anyone in the comments hasn't checked out the Goodreads group, I put sections, so it's basically like, let's chat about the first 100 pages, let's chat about the second 100 pages. And some things that came up a lot throughout those conversations were people being like, she's an unreliable narrator. Like, that has to be where it's going. We can't trust what she's saying. She doesn't feel like she is fully in her right mind. And seeing all the evidence and like everybody questioning her was so infuriating as a reader. It was like she went into that store, and that fucking guy who took over for the old owner,
Abdul. I loved Abdul. He was great.
My favorite thing about this book is the pairing of scenes. So like, we got the same scenes a couple different times, but we got to see it from a different perspective. Or like, it was just so like, it was written like she had the exact same entrance into the bodega. She picked up, like, you know, the same things, and then the scene would switch, and it was just showing us how things were like slowly changing. And that's why I don't understand when people are talking about like how it was so slow and then got fast so quickly, and that was a negative. I think that's such a positive thing, because it represents gentrification, how everything is happening so slowly and you don't recognize it. And when no one is watching, all of these things are going on around you, and then suddenly it's all encompassing and you don't know what happened. I just feel like I love books that the reading experience matches the character's experience. So getting to see how she was treated the second time she went into the bodega with a different person, and how everything had changed, and then him questioning her mental stability and making her like challenge her own thought process. It was so infuriating, and I'm just so impressed that Alyssa Cole could do that. And I'm just like, I'm picking up a romance from her. I don't read romance, but like, I'm obsessed with everything about this book. Like, I've never read a dual perspective that was so successful in a thriller. I really haven't. I at no point was like questioning the writing style being similar. Like, it was two distinct voices. It was so drastically different. I didn't prefer one POV over the other. Like, it was just such a good pairing. And I wonder if I don't know if you know, but if she's written any romance that have dual perspective, and we get to see it from multiple.
If I recall correctly, the Reluctant Royals does have dual perspective. It's not, is it first person? I don't remember. It's been like 3 months since I've read one, so I've absolutely forgotten everything about it. But like, same kind of, I think if you like the writing style, I think you'll enjoy the romance, because the writing style, it's not like super drastic changes between the genres. Like, you can tell that it's the same author in a good way.
I'm going to pick up more from her. I don't know if she's writing any more thrillers, but like, I really hope she does.
I think I did an interview with her in November, and I'm pretty sure she said she was going to be writing more, but I could have hallucinated that.
Is that on your channel?
No, I don't know if I ever uploaded it to my channel, because it was on, it was like a Zoom thing.
Oh, okay.
I'll see if I can find the link, and I'll post it if I can. But yeah, no, I had just found out I was pregnant when that happened, so I might have hallucinated parts of that.
Chaos.
So, it's a hot mess over here. It's fine.
Oh gosh, we went so over the time. If anybody has any final like questions they want to ask or anything they want us to talk about, leave it in the comments.
I had a final thing that I wanted to say because I saw someone comment about how Sydney was trained to question herself. And it just made me think about how I have noticed similarities within like the Black community, especially, that we're just very, very ready to question things. Like people of color in general are very ready to question things all the time. Like you like, for example, when someone says something to you, you're like, well, did they mean this? Did they mean that? Were they trying to say this? Like someone will say, oh, perfect example, when you change your wig or when you change your hair, someone's like, oh, interesting look. Or when they're like, your hair grew so fast. And you're like,
Or
well, did they mean this?
I like it when your hair's curly better.
Right. And
Or
then
I
you're
like
like
when your hair's
questioning,
straight better.
especially if it's like machine done curls, then you're like, okay, do they like these curls better because they look more like this and not my natural curls because it looks more like this? Or are they saying this? Are they saying that? And then you're like, do I say something? Because then if I say something and it wasn't this, then it looks like I'm doing this when I'm not doing this. And then you just end up not saying anything. So yeah. I'm like, ugh. That just made you think about that.
That's very accurate. And I identify with that as well. Oh my God. Or it's like, I like your hair better when it's like this and it's not frizzy. And it's like, because I didn't put 3 bottles of product in my hair today, Karen. That's why.
Not that.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just reading through the comments. I love all that. I'm gonna have to read through these afterwards and come back and read them all. I completely the people who say that the sex scene was like unnecessary, I don't agree. I don't know.
Lala's about to start making some romance videos. We're gonna see a romance haul in the future.
Honestly, like it felt right to me just because like I came from reading her romance books. So I'm like, I'm expecting one because it's Alyssa Cole. And I know she's gonna write a good one. And it's like it kind of broke everything up, but also it's like when you're questioning everything and you're thinking you're losing your mind and like you're totally alone in the world, you think, and it's like you just need to feel something. Yeah. It's all I agree, it's always necessary. It's fine.
I'm like, always.
Let's make this happen.
Listen, I
romance and Lala.
I kind of just like expected that's where it was going, not because I've read from her before, but because like this is just how these books work. Like when there's a mystery and there's 2 people who are attracted to typically people like each other, they're coming together to solve a mystery, like they're gonna have sex. Like I don't know, that's just
things are heating up in and out of the bedroom. Okay, sometimes pants just need to come off.
I'm gonna be honest, I definitely put that speed on like 3 times when that happened. I was like, oh, let's get back to the solving. Because I didn't see it coming, so I was like, wait a minute, not this man. Not him.
Yeah, like honestly, I question the choice in pants off partner because just oh my goodness.
Not that.
Oh my God, we're good. But yeah, like if we're being totally honest, I remember that it was coming, so I'm like, we're gonna speed up to get to this part. It's fine. I'm in my 2nd trimester, okay? Just let me live.
I just feel like once again, I don't know. I don't see that critique with a lot of other thrillers.
Yeah.
I feel like I've read most thrillers that I've read many thrillers for this book club have had like one overt sex scene between 2 characters, and I've never heard that feedback before. So it's
interesting.
It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
I just like consistency with people's reviews. I'm sure I've done this before, right? I'm not saying like I'm a perfect reviewer, But I struggle to recognize when a reviewer says like, I didn't like this thing in this book, but that exact same thing exists in another book and you loved it. Like, I struggle seeing, I just want more like understanding. Maybe that's how you feel, but I just want to understand it rather than just saying the sex scene was not necessary. Like, for who? Why? Like, why do you feel that way?
Also, because like she was being so sexualized by so many people, and she took it into her own hands and she took control of her own sexuality and was like, you know what? I want to do this. Not because other people are expecting me to. I just need to let off some steam and I need to feel something. But it's like the comments that the white neighbors were making about like the Terry, the one guy said something like he started saying something about how she could suck the shellac off something and Theo cut her off. I'm like, that made my skin crawl because I have heard people say that about me. I have heard an ex's friends say that kind of thing about me. And I'm like, I know that this happens, but just like every time I'm reminded of it, I'm like, I want to throw up on these people. And it's like, they weren't sexualizing any of the white characters. It was Sydney. Because she was wearing things that made her comfortable. And like, especially with like, she was wearing cutoff shorts because it's hot and you like, she's literally sweating buckets. What do you expect her to wear? A nun's habit, like the full thing? No. But like the overt sexualization was like, it hit home because it's exactly things I've heard. And like, I like that there was a sex scene where she did it because she wanted to, not because she felt coerced into it or anything. She wanted to do this. And she's like, I'm pretty sure she said like, I'm in my right mind. I want this. Like the consent was there too. That's what I like about Alyssa Cole. Yeah. She's very good about like actual overt consent, which is nice. And I know some people are like, you know what? That's not sexy though. Like, you're doing it wrong.
Oh my God. The number of times that I have fought people on that very fact. How do you not think that consent is sexy? This is a completely different like conversation and a completely different platform. But like, how is it not the sexiest thing in the world to know that the person you're having sex with wants to be there? How is that not sexy?
There's some questions you need to be asking yourself about a lot of things.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I wasn't like, I definitely, you know, in passing recognized as I was reading that she's being sexualized, but I don't think I made the connection between her having sex with Theo and that being like an important part of her character growth. Not growth, but just like an element of her character that like she is being hypersexualized by so many people, and like that was her taking control of her sexuality. That's something that I always appreciate in books and I just wasn't even thinking about.
Yeah, I know that we're like running out of time, so I'm going to say one more thing. And the one more thing I want to say is about the over-sexualization of Black women. Because somebody just mentioned WAP. And I'm like, yeah, you better mention WAP. Because I remember when that song came out, people were like, not Meg, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, when that song came out, and people were talking about how she was being too sexy and blah, 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 blah. And even this entire conversation, literally in this entire conversation about Sydney, and about like what Zoe said, like talking about how people just look at you. I literally vividly remember being in middle school.
Yep.
And all of us would be like, oh, Chanelle has those lips. Or like they would talk about, there's this Black girl in our class that me and her, we had very similar features. And people would always talk about the two of us and be like, oh, but they have those lips. So Black. Okay, I was literally wearing long sleeve shirts and scarves to school.
At my school, they call them DSLs for dick sucking lips.
Those. And it's
I heard that.
Yeah,
it was. I think grade 5 was the first time I heard that. At 10 years old.
So there's a whole different conversation, but I think that's another thing too. So yeah.
To sum up, this book was great.
Yep, it was amazing. Sum up, like Lala said, it was amazing. It was great. So many things to talk. Not me changing my mind and be like, it was amazing.
Like, actually, 5 stars.
I love that when that happens. Like when you're on the fence about a rating at the beginning of a live show, and then it's like, you know what, I didn't think about this, and now it's amazing, and now it's the best book in the whole world, and everybody should read it.
Because when I look at it as more than a thriller, which it is, then I'm like, no, it's hitting a little too hard. So,
oh my god, I feel like there's so many like plot things I wanted to talk about, like favorite scenes and least favorite scenes, and like how did you feel about this happening to this? But I really appreciate the conversation that I had the privilege of being a part of today. So thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
I think we're gonna wrap it up. I'm coming back. Hi, Erin.
Hi, Erin.
You're having a live, I'm assuming you just finished your live show, and I'm gonna hop over and watch it right now. Because I know we plan these for the same time, unfortunately, but I'm excited to go see your thoughts on Black Sun. That's a whole different conversation. Okay. Thank you guys for joining us. This was the longest live I've ever done, and I'm really glad. I'm really, really glad that you were both here. I'm so happy.
Thanks for having us.
I hope that I really appreciated all the audience interaction and everything you guys had to say, and I hope you gained something from these incredible women who joined me. So I will see you. When will I see you? Next month for House of Leaves.
Ooh, no, that big one.
I sure haven't started it. I'm definitely intimidated. Erin will be joining me next month for a discussion of that. So I hope everybody has a good time reading that. And I hope we all finish it in time. And I will see you guys later. Thanks so much for hanging out.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.